everybody, thank you so much for coming back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday. And as you guys can tell from the thumbnail and the title, I am joined in this video by my boy Esley from Entertainment Fanatic Reviews. He has all kinds of content about horror and different things like that, and he actually had me a little bit over a year ago at this point, or around a year ago, he had me in a video over on his channel where we talked about what got us into horror. I really appreciated him getting me to collab in that video. If I'm not mistaken, he was the first ever YouTuber to reach out to me to be in a collab, so this is the first time he's actually collabing over on my channel, so a big thanks to him for being in this video. We're gonna hear from him in just a little bit, so again, you guys can find the link to his channel down below. Give him some love. He's got some great horror content over there, and we're gonna hear from him in just one moment. So Jason Goes to Hell. Yeah, this is a film that I don't even want to say is divisive amongst fans, but it's definitely a film that is very unique in the franchise. It's definitely very memorable. There's a lot about it that definitely stands out, but at the same time, it's just another Jason Voorhees film. This is the 9th film in the Friday the 13th Jason Voorhees series, which is just hysterical really at this point. At the end of the last film, Jason was essentially disintegrated by acidic sewage in the sewers of Manhattan. In the 8th film, Jason Takes Manhattan. And this film essentially does not at all play off of the events of the finale of that film. Like I mentioned, at the end of that last film, he was destroyed, and at the beginning of this film, he is totally fine. He is Jason in full form with the mask and all. And I just love that if you're binging this series, which is what I did, I think it's hysterical that they just completely just don't pay attention to certain things that happen in previous films. They say, yeah, we're just gonna like not pay attention to that. And that's kind of part of what I enjoy about this franchise. It's so bad, it's so cheesy, it's so over the top at times that you just can't help but have a laugh at it. It feels like it doesn't take itself serious, and I think that that's kind of the charm of the franchise. There are some installments in the franchise that are really well done on a cinematic level and have a lot of fun and charm with the characters and things that are going on in the midst of it being this very ridiculous premise with a lot of really dumb characters. I think that that's just kind of part of what makes Friday the 13th Friday the 13th. But in this film, yeah, I just think it's hilarious how they start this movie off. So at the beginning of this movie, we're introduced to this young girl who's once again going to Camp Crystal Lake. Seems like it's gonna be your standard Friday the 13th film. You know, she's going to the camp, she's setting things up, she's ready to be there at this camp that's really dark and creepy and has like these little flickering lights, and of course, why would anybody want to be there? But she's there just like they are in all the other films. And she decides to get naked, decides to take a shower, and not too long into it, she hears some noises. She comes out, she gets a towel on, she's looking around, and Jason appears. Jason tries to attack her. She ends up falling out of this window, and it's a pretty gnarly fall. Like honestly, she should have been really hurt, but she gets up, she runs away from Jason, and not too long into this, we find out that she's leading Jason to a trap. Some big bright lights turn on, she does a somersault over something, and a bunch of guys from the FBI or from the military just appear and just start unloading on Jason with all kinds of assault weapons and guns of all kinds, and then they end up shooting a rocket launcher at him, blowing him to bits. And I just think it's hilarious that you have this opening sequence with this girl who comes to, the idea is that she's trying to lure Jason in. For the audience, they really want you to just be sold on the fact that she was actually, a camp counselor or somebody who's coming to this camp, and she's not a detective. So she does nothing at all that kind of even hints at her being a police officer or being an officer of any kind. She literally gets naked, and I think it's hysterical because then they start talking afterwards. All the officers are like, good job, and she's like, yeah, thank you. I knew what I was doing, blah blah blah. Like, this officer literally got naked and took a shower and totally committed to the role just for Jason to appear. She could have just been there. Jason would have seen her and he would have come. I just think it's hysterical that she does nothing at all that acts like a police officer until she does this somersault over the log or whatever she jumps over. It's so cheesy, it's so over the top, and it's just a way to start this movie off. So like I mentioned, Jason has been destroyed and just blown to bits, and now his body is at the coroner's office, and we get into what really makes this movie very unique, is that this film actually doesn't have a lot of Jason in it. Jason is technically in the film, but the Jason Voorhees that we all know with the mask on and that is the big hulking monster with the machete is really hardly in this film at all. I think he only has about 10 minutes of screen time, similar to the Jason 5 or the 5th film in the franchise, where he's not really there. It's a copycat killer, and you find that out at the very end. However, in this one, the coroner ends up being just enamored with Jason still beating heart. He's like called into it, and he ends up eating Jason's heart. In this, Jason ends up transferring his soul into the coroner. So now you have this coroner who is walking around just looking like a normal person, but it's Jason on the inside. And throughout the course of the film, Jason is literally transporting his soul into different bodies. I think it's hysterical. It's the most ridiculous premise. And there's even really hilarious moments, almost like a reverse Dracula situation, where whenever he walks past a mirror, if it's a normal person, as if I was possessed by Jason and I walked past a mirror, you would see Jason in the mirror, which I just thought was so ridiculous and just leans into how silly this movie really is. Not too long into the film, we're introduced to this bounty hunter who seems to know absolutely everything about Jason, and there's a bunch of new lore that's introduced into this movie and new characters that you've never heard about, because this is just a movie that wants to do its own thing. This bounty hunter, I believe his name is Creighton Dukes or something like that, he's just so over the top. The guy who plays him in this film just gives a really over the top and just cheesy performance, but I think he's easily the best part of this movie. He definitely knows what movie he's in, and he's definitely leaning into the cheesiness that kind of goes with this kind of movie and the different things that go on here.
I'm going to say 2 words to you, Mr. Duke, and I want you to say the first thing that comes to your mind, okay?
Okay.
You ready?
Shoot.
Jason Voorhees.
Well, that makes me think of a little girl in a pink dress sticking a hot dog through a donut.
I think it goes without saying that this is not a movie that I love, but it's a film that I enjoy on a cheesy level as a fan of horror and a fan of slashers and as a fan of this franchise. This film also came out in 1993, which is the year that I was born, and I can very much remember going to places like Blockbuster and different kinds of rental stores and always seeing this on the shelf. It had this really badass cover where Jason's mask had like a snake coming out of one eye and there was fire coming out of the back, and I remember thinking, God, I want to watch that movie, and I didn't see it for many years after, but yeah, I just always have remembered seeing this movie around. And never when I saw the cover as a kid, when I walked past it on Blockbuster, did I ever think that this was going to be the movie. It is over the top. It's ridiculous. Jason is hardly in the film, though he's in the film, but he's not. He's transferring his soul to different bodies, and it's just such a silly premise. Now, I definitely still have plenty to say about this movie, but let's go ahead and hear what Entertainment Fanatic Reviews had to say about this.
Hey Anthony, thank you so much for letting me take part in this Jason Goes to Hell review. First off, I want to say that I'm in the minority of people that truly enjoy this film despite its flaws, because it does have quite a few flaws, but I don't let a lot of them get to me, but there are a couple of scenes that are like, was that really necessary? Particularly the scene where the coroner just looks at Jason's heart and decides to eat it. I'm like, there's no reason to have done that. Like, he's not even possessed yet, but I get why they did it, because how else are we going to get a possession film? I don't know. The shaving scene is totally unnecessary. Like, there is no reason as to why that should be in that film. I don't know. It was very uncomfortable watching it, and like, I would probably skip over that scene if me and a few friends were watching it, because I'm just like, yeah, this one's a bit weird. But anyways, other than those 2 scenes, I thoroughly enjoy the rest of the film. I will say, the first time I watched it, I had really low expectations going into it, because I heard a lot of people talk about it in a negative mindset, and so like, I went in thinking this was going to be the worst or one of the worst, but I came out thinking, you know, this is pretty good. I get the hate behind it, because this is pretty much Jason Goes on Vacation. That's what I like to call this film. After 8 films, they pretty much did the same thing over and over again, so I like that they did something different. The reasons why I really like this film is the campiness. I really like it. It's one of the campiest films in the franchise. You know, parts 5 and 6, I feel, are pretty campy, and this one's up there with those. The practical effects in the unrated cut is something else. Like, this film has one of the best deaths in the franchise, but if you watch the R-rated version, they cut that scene out, the one in the tent. We all know which one it is, and it shows it, and it's all bloody goriness in the unrated cut, and it's awesome. The score itself is one of my favorites in the franchise. It's also very, very campy. Harry Manfredini returns. He did the score for the first 7 films. I don't know why he didn't return for part 8, but he comes back with this one, and it's very campy as well. The beginning scene where Jason blows up, I think it's the only explosion in the franchise, or at least one of the very few, and it's probably my favorite. I mean, after that, some people might turn the movie off, but I don't know. You know, if that scene turned you off, just watch the film. Think of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I really like Creighton Duke in this film. He's one of my favorite characters in the franchise, and I also think that this film is very well acted for the most part, but the main character and his ex-wife and Creighton Duke are probably my 3 favorite characters in this film. I know this is a little off topic, but in Jeepers Creepers 3, there's also like a bit of a Creighton Duke knockoff, if you will. And also, the ending to this scene is one of my favorite endings to any horror film ever. You know, you have Freddy's glove and it just drags Jason's mask down to hell, and I thought that was really cool. The only bad part about that is they had to wait another 10 years for Freddy vs. Jason, but in my eyes, it was worth it because I was 4 when Freddy vs. Jason came down, and that's one of my favorites in the franchise. But I'm getting a little off topic. But yeah, I really enjoy this film. It's like a 4 out of 5 for me, and thank you, Anthony, so much for letting me take part in this video. I really enjoy this film, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
A big thanks to Esley for being here in this video. Again, guys, you can find the links to his channel down below in the description box. Give him some love. Loved hearing what you had to say on this movie, man. There's definitely a lot of positives, and there's definitely a lot of what the fuck moments in this movie. Loved having you in this video, my friend, and I look forward to many more collabs. So like I mentioned, it goes without saying that this is a film that I'm not absolutely crazy about, but I enjoy it just for being really cheesy. I think if you're 9 films into this franchise and you're expecting anything absolutely amazing narratively, then you're watching the wrong franchise. This film definitely has a lot of the same negatives and positives of the Jason franchise. It's just a very silly and over-the-top premise. I wish Jason was in the film a little bit more, but I appreciate this film for, you know, what it is as in the whole of the franchise. It's ridiculous, it's over-the-top. Jason is transporting his soul to different bodies. And the kills in this film, a lot of times, are actually really solid. I own the unrated cut of the film, and if you, there's only slight differences, but some of the stuff that's in the unrated version is definitely a lot better, especially when it comes to the special effects. One of the biggest positives I can give this film are the special effects. There's some really, really great gore effects in here, some great body horror, specifically where this guy is melting at the very end of the film. And there's also this very, very strange sequence at the end of the film where this guy who's possessed by Jason, his neck cracks open, and then this I don't know, centipede-esque monster, this demon creature comes out of the guy's neck, and I'm guessing it's Jason. And yeah, they do some really, really strange things here in this movie with Jason and the lore around Jason. But yeah, I really always enjoyed the special effects of this film. Probably my favorite kill in this movie, and one of my favorite kills in the franchise, is there's actually a couple that's having sex in a tent, which if you do some research, they had just recently broken up right before making this movie, which is kind of awkward because it's actually one of the most explicit sex scenes in this franchise. The 2 people were actually fully naked in this sequence, which is again strange because they had just recently broken up before filming this. But yeah, they're having sex, and while she's on top of him, Jason gets there and ends up shoving a pole straight through the tent, goes straight through her stomach, and he just rips up and he completely splits her in half. And it's a really effective sequence. I think the special effect really still holds up today. Going back and watching it, it was still definitely effective, and it kind of made me go oh shit. Alright guys, so I had some technical difficulties. I left that little blip in that you guys can see right before this clip where I was talking and it got a little fuzzy. I left that in just so you guys can see that the video was starting to go south, and I didn't notice until I got to this point in the editing process, adding in the clips and everything, that I didn't have the rest of the video. It showed in my actual photo gallery, or that I had the full amount of time in the video, but I hadn't watched it back. I'd never actually had this issue happen before, and when I went to go watch it back in full unedited, the last 7 or 8 minutes of this video was sadly just black screen, no audio. I've never had that happen. I think that my camera may have run out of space and it just kind of kept recording and said that there was all that length, but there was nothing there. So yeah, it's kind of a bummer. It's a whole nother day. I filmed that review a couple of days ago, so I was in the mojo, I was in the moment, and I had the movie a little bit fresher on my mind. But I didn't forget the movie, of course. I just recently saw it, and it's very fresh on the mind still on an overall level. So I want to be able to pick up from where I left off, but I know I'm not going to be able to do it the exact same way. So first of all, just thanks in the middle of this review. Thanks for watching. I did not expect to have to do this in the middle of the editing process, but that's kind of the fun of YouTube, right? Sometimes things like this happen and you just kind of have to go with it. So, as I was saying with Jason Goes to Hell, I was just talking about that badass sequence where the girl gets ripped in half. I was going to throw the clip in here, but since there's nudity and there is a lot of blood and stuff, I didn't want to have any issues as far as copyright or just kind of putting explicit material up on this video. It's not what I'm going for with this video, but it is an epic kill. If you guys are looking to just check out some cool kills or something like that, if you look up the kills of this movie, it's one of the first ones in the movie. and it's definitely a really solid special effect that still really holds up. Now, one thing I know I was about to start getting into was the lore that this film introduces. Not only do you have this whole element where Jason is sending his soul into different bodies, you also have the fact that we learn that he has a half-sister that has never been introduced ever before, as well as another family member, and you essentially find out that through their family, if he can find one of their bodies and send his soul into one of them, he can essentially resurrect himself in full. And one of the characters in this film, like spoilers, one of the characters in this movie who is related to him ends up dying, and the carcass, he ends up putting his soul into them. Well, not even that he puts his soul into them. I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. Just a moment ago in this review, I mentioned that there's a part where this spider-like or centipede-esque creature, or this demon creature, comes out of this guy's neck who was possessed by Jason, and it's, I guess, believed to be Jason. And this thing ends up falling down into the basement where this dead body of the relative of Jason is, and the next thing you know, Jason just pops out fully resurrected, completely in the same clothes he was in before, looking exactly like he did at the very beginning of the movie, with the mask and the machete. It's so ridiculous, it's so over the top. But again, I guess the premise now is that if he can get his soul into the body of somebody who is part of his same bloodline, that he can fully resurrect himself. And yeah, then you have this really ridiculous finale. Again, you have this crazy bounty hunter character in the midst of it, played by Stephen Williams, Creighton Duke. He's such a great and just over-the-top silly character. The line of dialogue, just that one clip I put in there earlier, I think is enough for you to know what kind of character you have here. He knows so much about Jason, and this film just tries to, like, again, introduce new lore, but have all this really silly stuff going on in the mix with it too. It's a film that is just, it's fun to watch as a fan of Jason Voorhees and as a fan of the Friday the 13th franchise. I can see some people hating this movie, which is, this is why I said earlier that I kind of feel like it's divisive, because there's some people that hate this movie and there's some people that love this film. Is it your typical Jason film? No. I know that some people probably really hate this movie, but there's something about it that I enjoy, and I think the ending of this film definitely makes it kind of exciting, especially the last few moments. Essentially, we are also introduced to the fact that there's like some sort of special Voorhees dagger. I don't remember what it's called. I don't know why I said dagger like that a second ago, but they end up taking this dagger and they have to shove it through Jason's chest in order to kill him and send him to hell, to kind of reverse the whole fact that he's now been resurrected for good. They end up doing that. The one of the girls, are the one who ends up, I think it's his half-sister. His half-sister is the one who ends up doing it, and she stabs him through the chest. Jason ends up getting pulled down to hell by these like cool, like kind of like tree-like demon creatures that come out. That's just a cool special effect. Again, the special effects in this movie are really top-notch. And then once he gets pulled down, not too long later, we get to see our two main characters, the surviving characters of the film, walk off into the sunset. Tons of people died in this movie by Jason and all the various people that Jason possessed. And then it cuts back to Jason's mask just sitting there within the dirt, and then you start to see the sand or the dirt moving, and you hear this demonic laugh, and the iconic Freddy Krueger glove comes out and grabs Jason's mask and pulls him down. And yeah, that's how the movie ends. And I will say it's a really exciting ending. As a fan of Freddy Krueger and Jason, to be able to watch that sequence is always cool. You almost forget about the rest of the movie because you just want to see what's going to happen next. And it's funny because we would get Jason X first. Jason X, the one where he goes to space, happens first. I think it happens like 8 or 9 years after this movie came out. I want to say like, or somewhere it was 7 or 8 years. I don't know off the top of my head right now. But it was about a decade later until we got Freddy versus Jason. So there's a whole other Jason movie that came out before we even got the follow-up to what this was teasing, which is hilarious to me. And that Jason X, that's going to be an interesting one to talk about. But yeah, guys, this isn't exactly everything that I said in the last review. Again, I kind of had to just get up from editing and kind of just shoot this in here so I could finish the video. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about Jason Goes to Hell. I think I've said enough for you guys to know that it's not a film I love, but I do recommend it as a fan of slashers and a fan of horror and a fan of ridiculous, over-the-top, kind of comedic, just over-the-top junk like this. I love movies like this for some reason. There's a lot about the special effects that are really solidly done. It's not your classic, typical Jason film, so you can't really expect it to be, but there is a lot about this movie that I feel really does work, and I would love to hear what you guys have to say. So leave those comments down below. Do you like this movie? Do you hate this movie? Definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. Hit that subscribe button if you guys enjoy these videos. I really want to be able to get to 1,000 within the next couple of months, and you guys are a huge part of that. So a big thanks to all of you guys. Share these videos to people that you know will be into this kind of content. And either way, a big thank you for watching. And as usual, you guys can catch me in the next one. Bye-bye.